The sounds of Majora's Mask create vivid memories for gamers. A possessed moon looming overhead, piercing eyes fixed on a heart-shaped mask, skipping atop a swamp surface, rolling down an Arctic mountain, or shooting out of the ocean like a missile. Without a doubt, The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask was a complete left turn from its predecessor. No one could have guessed that this was where our hero of time would be taken to next. It has led a cult following, with many claiming it to be the best in the series, while others avoid the entry altogether. One thing that can't be denied is that it is possibly the most unique Zelda game ever released. Giving the player a ticking clock to save the world or complete a particular quest before experiencing extinction was enough to become memorable. In my last video essay, I discussed how the concept of time was our hero's worst enemy. You could say the theme of Majora's Mask is also battling time, and you would be right. But I believe that this game's true identity lies hidden from the player, that the world, its characters, the tone, even the game's biggest questions are all hiding behind a mask, albeit a metaphorical one. In other words, the theme of Majora's Mask is that the truth is often hidden behind a lie. This is the reason why players return to the game year after year, because they think maybe, just maybe, they'll learn something new about this twisted world and finally be able to unmask Majora. After the game's inciting incident, the player is put into what appears to be a charming, colorful world full of the same wacky NPCs that we know and love. The music is upbeat. There is humor thrown at you, left and right, whether it's through certain character models or that classic Zelda dialogue. The player taking control of a child even suggests that the game is meant to be played by, well, a child. But after just a few moments, it becomes clear that this game is more mature and a little too scary for children. There is something off about it. The game looks happy on the surface, but underneath there are elements of terror. When you look around, there is a lot of joy spread through the world of Clocktown and throughout Termina. But if you look closer, you will see a large amount of suffering around you. Clocktown's happy tone is juxtaposed with the inhabitants living in fear, accepting their doom, fighting, thieving, and running for their lives. The moment you step out of Clocktown, the rest of the world of Termina is even worse. The lands are charming in appearance and provide the player with many fun experiences, but what's hiding underneath the surface are characters who are plagued by the curse of Majora's Mask and the impending doom of the moon's fall. If the player sticks to the main quest, they'll experience a simple quest of good triumphing over evil. They'll cleanse the four lands of Majora's influence, awakening the four giants, thus stopping Skull Kid, the falling moon, and venture inside to face Majora himself, breaking the time loop. But if the player veers off the main path, they're sure to find many of this game's highlights. A variety of quests that introduce the player to the characters who are in need of healing. Nintendo perfectly executed the progression of the world's NPCs. Their stories are ever-changing over the 3-day cycle. This can be tracked by the Bomber's Notebook, where you can file away everyone's schedules and keep a track of who you've helped along the way. I distinctly remember my first playthrough, finally figuring out how to blow my way past the boulder blocking Milk Road, only to discover Romani Ranch behind it. There was so much land on the other side, new characters to interact with, mini-games to complete, and my entrapped horse Epona to free. Sadly, I was left with no time to do any of it. The characters would barely engage with me because the end was near and they were awaiting their doom. But if I found a way to Romani Ranch sooner, then I'd find ways I could fix these characters' problems, free my horse, collect a few masks, stop an alien invasion, and more. There are many moments just like this in Majora's Mask that are memorable, but the ones that stick out to me are the Anju Cafe quest and saving the little girl's mummified father. They display the deeper moments that harken back to the Happy Mask salesman's pitch of spreading happiness. I believe this game is a success because it causes the player to start asking questions. And it is when we start asking questions that we start investing even more. When I think about Majora's Mask, I think about all the YouTube videos that I've seen of theorists trying to solve the game's biggest mysteries. I think about all the questions I've mulled over all the years. Everything that we have known about Zelda lore has been more or less spelled out for us in past games. We understood clearly the creation of Hyrule and of the Triforce. We understood how its peoples came to be. But here was a game where Zelda was not present. There was no Ganon conflict. We weren't even in Hyrule anymore. Now, it is worth mentioning that this was not the first time that the series took this approach. Link's Awakening had done the same thing with Link washing up on the shore of Koholint Island, but in that story, that place ended up being a dream. So we all wondered, was Termina all in Link's head as well? Did any of this even matter? If you want my opinion, I believe that Termina is a real place, a magical dimension created by the mysterious ancient tribe to act as an alternate version of Hyrule. This is why the NPCs appear to be the same, but different. It makes sense since this place can be conceivably found somewhere in the Lost Woods, where any Kokiri who had transformed into a Skull Kid could stumble in. This world has its own godlike entities as well, which is why the 3 goddesses aren't present. Instead, we have 4 giants who look after the land. We have a moon with a face on it. Now, the moon is usually a kind and gentle entity celebrated in Termina's culture, but now under Skull Kid's curse, wears a terrifying face and is plummeting toward the earth. Link is introduced to a world where wearing and collecting masks is just a part of the culture. The land of Termina celebrates the Carnival of Time each year, fashioning masks of the 4 giants and asking them for a year of good harvest. We learn this from Andrew's grandmother in the Stockpot Inn. We also learn of the legend of the 4 giants, where long ago they separated the 4 lands and left in each direction. Their friend, an imp, felt betrayed by this and threw the land into turmoil, until the giants told him to leave or they would, quote, tear him apart. The grandmother says that the imp returned to the heavens and harmony was restored. Now, it's interesting that this legend mirrors what is currently happening in the plot of this game, and it has made fans wonder if Skull Kid was the very same imp from the story or if Link was just reliving history. If you ask me, no, I don't believe that Skull Kid was the same imp. One thing that is extremely important to remember when talking about Zelda is when a character is imparting a tale or a legend to the player. They are just stories, and the truths of those stories can be lost over time. When discussing the lore of Majora's Mask, you can't go too long without talking about one of the game's most mysterious characters, the Happy Mask Salesman. He first appears in Ocarina of Time, and in that game we learn that he just arrived in Castletown. He is a stranger to all he comes across, which adds to his mystery. Somewhere along his travels, though, he comes across the Mask of Majora, which kicks off our story here. He is the only character to tell Link of the origins of the mask. An ancient tribe of magic dwellers were responsible for its creation, but upon seeing its terrible power, they sealed it into darkness forever. He then goes on to state that the tribe has vanished, and none remain who know the true nature of the mask's power. There are a couple of truths I take from this. 1. I believe the ancient tribe who created the mask are the very same tribe referenced in Twilight Princess. The reason they vanished was because they were condemned by the gods after the Triforce War and sent to the Twilight Realm. 2. I believe that Majora was one of these magic dwellers and was an outcast among his own tribe. This is depicted for us in the game's final hours. While inside the moon, we see 5 children. The 4 are all wearing the masks of the game's bosses, while the 1 sits alone and is wearing Majora's mask. This metaphor gives you an idea of what happened to Majora back in its origins and how the Twilight Tribe have attempted to seal his power away. But if you're a keen-eyed Zelda gamer, you probably made an altogether earth-shattering connection. All the children depicted in this scene look like younger versions of, you guessed it, the Happy Mask Salesman. Do I definitely know the answer to this character's origins? No. But I do subscribe to the theory that this character is not what he seems. We don't know his name or how he came across the mask. What we do know is that he hides behind his own mask, behind a plastered smile that he wears at all times, hiding his real emotions underneath. He is fixed on the concept of happiness, and you're never quite sure if it's something that he's achieved for himself. It's possible that he could be one of the descendants of this ancient tribe. But I'll share my favorite theory that has absolutely zero proof to back it up. I believe that the Happy Mask Salesman could be Majora himself. His power was taken from him, and it was put into this mask and then later sealed away. So he wanders, searching for his power, struggling to find happiness without it, only to find it and witness for himself the destruction that it can bring, and finally accepting that true happiness does not come from power, but from healing, thus vanishing into the unknown forever. I can't tell you the amount of time that I have spent trying to figure out the mystery of the fierce deity mask, trying to understand why it bears Link's face, why Majora gives it to you, even though it's far more powerful. I have heard many other people discuss convoluted backstories behind the fierce deity mask. My favorite theory behind it comes from the game's brief explanation and how you obtain it. We are told that its dark powers could be as terrible as Majora's. We are also told that it contains the merits of all masks. People have deciphered that this means the fierce deity's mask represents all the pain and suffering from everyone in Termina, that all the work Link put in to help everyone and heal their sorrows was exchanged for this mask. In other words, the mask contains the power of all people to combat this ancient evil. It's a loose theory, but the one that makes the most sense to me. One thing that we know is that Link does not hold on to this mask, that he recognizes its dark power and leaves it behind. Perhaps Majora only gave it to him because he thought that Link would succumb to its darkness. You've probably noticed a trend here. Another YouTuber who is looking too much into a video game. I admit it, I am. I didn't set out to make a theory video when I started this, but I found you can't really talk about Majora's Mask without sharing your theories. The game, after all, was designed around that concept. I realize I have no proof for my theories or explanations. Everything that we see in this game was presented in a way that suggests there's more around the corner that we just can't see. That things are never what they seem, and there are deeper truths that we will spend years and decades debating about. So now, it's time to finally share the one theory that I think explains everything. What I'm about to say has the potential to uncover every hidden mystery and truth behind Majora's Mask. I believe the biggest questions of this Zelda game do not and will not have an explanation behind them. The aha moments and expositions that we, the fans, think should be spelled out never will be. We have to accept the truth that the creators behind Majora's Mask could be just as lost about the lore as we are. I don't want to suggest that everything was just made up during development and that there's no explanation behind the moon or the legends of the giants or the connection between the masks, but I do believe that they were not thinking about fleshing out these mysteries out as much then as we are now. They set out to create a weird and wacky world for Link to run around in, and they succeeded. They were focused on building a creative and challenging game, and they knocked it out of the park. Now, it's totally possible that someone from Nintendo could come out and explain Majora's Mask to us, but I can guarantee you that they would not go into as much detail or depth as we would want them to. This mirrors the theme of Majora's Mask, that everything about this game is hiding from the player, which is why the game is as charming as it is, because we will never truly know the truth. The truth is hiding behind a lie. I hope you enjoyed this dive into Majora's Mask, and I'd love to keep the endless conversation going. I'd love to hear your theories. Tell me if I'm way off or if you agree with anything that I said. And if at any point during the video you liked what you heard, please leave me a like below. And if you're finding me for the first time, consider subscribing and ringing the bell for notifications so you can get all your Zelda coverage here. I'll see you in the next video. Happy gaming.